Now let's talk about personalization. So here's a quick presentation, about 10 minutes, about introduction to personalization. We're going to be covering the following topics. Why to personalize? Then, always important, what is the business case for personalization? How to actually define personalization and how it's different from optimization. Then sort of practical, like setting up personalization, and a quick demo. So those are the topics today. The first one is why. And here's a great example on why we want to personalize. So as you can imagine, even on a desktop, the screen is quite small. On mobile, it's even smaller. And the attention span of people is getting shorter and shorter, which practically means that you have a very small real estate to provide the relevant content for your website visitor. And the visitors are in a different situation. So one of them is coming from a campaign, other one is a new visitor, somebody might have abandoned a cart twice. I mean, they are at a different stage of their customer journey, and to serve them as well as possible, it would make sense to provide them dynamic content based on what we think is interesting for them. I also see that personalization is a form of good customer service. Similarly, as nobody likes to wait in line in the store, people don't want to be browsing a site trying to find the right thing when we actually can serve them the right thing. So that's the reason. There's a lot of research around the topic. Here are some interesting studies. So Accenture says that over 90% of people are more likely to shop sites that actually recognize and remember them. Then the most interesting one, and maybe the one we mostly use with our clients, is the middle one from Boston Consulting Group, that companies that do personalize see a revenue increase from 6 to 10%, which is really significant, and that often works as the baseline for building the business case for personalization, which we're going to look on the next slide. And what's quite important is that you build this dual-level business case, so you consider both increase in revenue and reduction in expenses. And when you think of the online revenue, of course the drivers or the KPIs that are driven by personalization are conversions, average basket size, value of items, and loyalty. And then if you're talking about a retailer that also has a brick and mortar, then you have to take into account your in-store. Nowadays there is research that even 80% of in-store purchases have been initiated online. So people review the options online and then they go into the store to make the purchase. Then the other side, the expenses side. So how can we reduce expenses with personalization? There are sort of 4 key elements here, which require using a personalization engine such as Frosmo. So the first one is faster experience optimization, meaning being able to create a hypothesis, test it online, improve, allow algorithm to do the improvement, and then again improve. So it's this continuous cycle of improvement. And then it's less development work if you use ready features from a ready personalization platform. Then the acquisition cost, which is really, really important, because when you of course can only get loyal customers if you get new first-time purchasing customers. And when your experience you're offering is good, you're more likely to have loyal customers, which again reduces your cost of acquisition. And the last thing, which is driven by conversions, are the improved conversions from advertising, meaning that when you drive traffic to the site, you can get them to convert better. It actually reduces your cost of customer acquisition and makes your marketing spending more effective. So that's the business case. And to then jump into the definition, like what actually is personalization. We've now established that it makes sense to personalize the experience, and there is a business case for it, and it's quite often sort of in the same domain with website optimization. So how we see that these two are different from one another is that when you talk about personalization, you take into account these two different dimensions. So you have the visitor and their history, which might mean earlier purchases, earlier exits, search history, and so on. And you combine that with the context. The context meaning, for example, which day of the week it is, what's the weather like, what's the location, what is the device, are there some campaigns? So it's about the situation, not about the visitor itself. So when you combine the history and the context, that allows you to personalize the experience provided for the visitor. And then what's actually optimization? We see that optimization is something that's happening it's temporary. When you optimize something, for example, your product page, you might run some A/B tests, do some algorithm-driven optimization, but it's always something that it's kind of a project, a temporary thing. You run it on the site, and then you improve the site according to the results. But personalization is something that's a core part of the experience that your site is providing. So that's how we at Frosmo define personalization. Then what it practically looks like is that even though we might not know who your visitor is, here we have an unknown person, there is still a lot of data we can take. And the data is sort of, there are some examples on the bubbles around the person. So there is the location, weather, time of the day, contextual information, then history, interests, might be some demographical information available, and then based on the algorithms we have, we'll be able to predict their current needs and intents. So we take this all this background data, use that to create an individual experience to then actually drive conversions. And what this looks like more on the sort of architecture level is that typically the data that you can take about the visitor can be CRM data, CDP, ERP data. It might be something about their behavior. It might be something that's fed by an algorithm. So there's a lot of data that can be used. Then Frosmo you can think of as a rule engine inside the browser. So it doesn't replace anything from your tech stack. It's a rule engine that's actually modifying the experience based on these rules of who we're targeting, when we want to target them, where we want to target them, and what is the content we want to serve to them. And this happens on the fly in the browser as the person is browsing on the site. And what the visitor then sees is they might be exposed to some A/B testing, they might see targeted content, search results that serve them as well as possible, some call to actions, or some recommendations. So these might be product recommendations or content recommendations. And these are the components that create the personalized experience. Then what we are then serving for the e-commerce manager and digital marketing manager or agency are these testing results and impact analysis. How is personalization working? Of course, everything can be also analyzed in Google Analytics or Google Data Studio, and then you can use the same data to enrich your customer information. So on the high level, you take data about the situation, you create a relevant dynamic experience using it, and then you can analyze the results. So that's the big picture. I will now show a quick example from our own site, how this works. So if you think of our own site, we as a Frosmo are a software company. So we are selling our software to e-commerce sites, retail, travel, gaming sites to use as a personalization engine. But in addition to the end customers, we have another sort of target audience or a segment who are people who are interested in collaborating with us, so potential partners. So what we wanted to do is that if somebody is interested in partnership, we actually serve them content that we believe is relevant for them. So now I'll show you how that works. I'm now jumping to our own website, which you can see here. Frosmo is the most versatile personalization software. We also have a really cool calculator here at the front page on how to build the business case for personalization. But then, okay, how do we know that somebody might be interested in partnership? So I have a hypothesis. If somebody actually makes the effort and navigates down to company and partner program, that's most likely somebody who's interested in joining our partner ecosystem. So I'm reading through this, but I'm not sort of converting yet. I'm not clicking my call to action yet. I'm still here. So what I have now created the dynamic experience is that if this visitor goes back to the homepage, what they actually see is content that we believe is interesting for visitors interested in the partner ecosystem. So I go back to the homepage, and now the content I receive is dedicated for partners. So I have Frosmo for partners here, and then I have agile front-end development for Magento Enterprise. I have some headless CMS, and I have actually some contentful content. So this, now you can see that the front page experience is different when you are segmented into interested in partnership. And that's in brief what personalization is all about. So we try to estimate what's relevant for a visitor and serve them that content as easily as possible. So that's really personalization in a nutshell. We're happy to discuss more, but now I want to thank you for taking this time and watching the session, and it was nice talking to you.